Welcome back to Open Studio. Happy Wednesday, everyone. What's going on? All right, we are finishing up this little guy right here. I kind of ended hard on that, trying to fix those windows, and at the end of it, I'm like, yeah, I was just gonna like kind of blast it all in with the gray down below and ignore that, the bottom windows that I screwed up, but I'm gonna fix them. How are you all doing on this Wednesday? Hopefully pretty well. We are still, as of filming this, we're still in a proper Ohio winter. It's been cold for a couple weeks now, like good cold, like zero cold. So looking forward to springtime already. All right, now let's get this light gray here. So I'm just gonna kind of clean up the mess that kind of happened down in here a little bit. I kind of rushed it at the end to get it done. And I know we were running a couple minutes over, and that didn't help much because I was like I said, I was pushing it to get it fixed real quick, and I was looking at it after. I'm like, bah, that's gross. We don't want that. Again, this is all going to be kind of faded down here, but again, I don't want it, if I can fix it, I will. All right, that's pretty solid. Again, this is going to be faded with the black, so I do have a little bit of leeway there. And next thing I want to do is I want to kind of put all the little air conditioning units and fun little greebles on top of this building, and this building will be done. Okay, so it's pretty much the same color as everything else. The behind this is really dark, so that's going to set all this off, so I don't have to worry about painting this, different gray to make it pop out, because it's going to anyway. Get a little whatever these things are on the top of this. I should change out the wet palette too, which by the next episode you may see that. I want to try those new, I got new parchment, different type of parchment for it, kind of by accident, but I'm also pretty excited about it to see what the difference is. Maybe we'll get that in for the next one, but we'll see. I don't want to start working on these buildings just yet. I want to make sure I finish this guy first, and that looks pretty good. It's pretty dark down here though. Something going on down there at the bottom of the building. All right, and as I'm getting this pulled together, we have I'm super happy that some people have kind of jumped in on that community post on my YouTube channel. So if you're not familiar, I put up a post a couple weeks ago asking for soapbox topics, so things to talk about while we're painting. So I've had a couple people jump in on that, which I'm super happy about. So we'll start with that, and we'll just keep it going as long as you guys post community in that community post. As long as you post soapbox topics, I will do my best to get to them and rant away, as it were. So the first one comes from our buddy AstralSolari, and his comment was back. This is his comment. So he says, back when I started out in airbrushing, they were expensive and hard to get into because nobody wanted to have anything to do with them in art. Then Photoshop kicked in right when I was starting getting good at most of the best airbrush companies died. Now you can find all sorts of crappy airbrushes you shouldn't touch with a barge pole. The world is crazy. Discuss. So I have thoughts about all of that. I was in the same exact boat when I started airbrushing in the late 80s. Things were transitioning from physical illustration to computer-generated illustration, and I was interested in it, but I wasn't, super sold on it, and I had already fallen in love with the airbrush, so I ended up kind of transitioning everything I was doing to more fine art. I was gonna paint. But when I first got into airbrushing, I found the same thing as Astral. Like the airbrushes, they weren't a ton of airbrush companies out there. The big ones were there, Paasche and Badger and Iwata and Thayer and Chandler, which was eventually bought by Badger. And then there were the more fringy type brushes that weren't necessarily really available in the U.S., like Olympus, Aerograph, Harder and Steenbeck. You just couldn't. They were there certainly, but they weren't available in the U.S. really. So my first airbrush, I was fortunate in that my dad's company had an artist that used airbrushes, and I was able to kind of go in to work with my dad one day and had lunch with this guy, and for the life of me, I'm a dumbass for not getting or not remembering his name, taking the time to remember his name, because he was the guy, and he said, if you're getting into this, get this brush, and he recommended the Iwata HP-SB, which was my very, very first airbrush. And I was in college, and money was tight, and I couldn't afford a compressor for it, so it literally sat on my dresser unused for months. And however, I was enthralled by this little thing. It was the nicest thing I owned, because I spent a lot of money on it. And as a matter of fact, I remember spending over $200 on it. And back in '88, that was ridiculous. I'm pretty sure I paid list price for it. But I didn't know what they went for, and I didn't know what was good and what wasn't good. And, I took this guy's recommendation, and I'm super glad I did, because I still have that brush. It still works, and it's amazing. And it, gave me, as I was learning to learn on a tool like that, I never, questioned that it was the brush. If I was having a problem, it was probably me, and I was right. Which is nice, because, one thing Astral talks about is how there's a lot of junk out on the market. And it's not only airbrushes. You can go to Harbor Freight and buy whatever, crappy tool you want. And then it's what's going on right now. I call it the Temu mentality, Yeah, you feel like you're living like a billionaire until whatever you bought breaks in 5 seconds because it's a piece of garbage. Well, the same is true with airbrushes. There are a lot of airbrush manufacturers that produce extremely low quality tools, and it makes it really tough. All right, so that's all good. I've got this building pretty much done, except for the stuff around it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on this little hollow right here next. I think that's a good way to go. Is there enough of it that I can see what I'm doing? Yeah, you know what? I think there is. Yeah, there is. I can just go for it. Okay. I was just making sure I had enough of these little land. Oh, you can't see it. I'll be good. I promise. I was going to see if I had enough of these little landmarks here to get things started, and I think I do. So for me, again, yes, it was unfortunate that there weren't that many resellers. I went to a big drafting art supply store called Charette's, and it was in the New England area, and they were a gigantic graphic design type art store. So that's where I got mine. And like I said, I didn't know at the time I paid list price for it, but plus, I didn't really, Coast Airbrush was just starting. Bear Air was just starting up. There weren't very many specific airbrush places like there are now, like Spray Gunner and Coast is still around, and Maple Airbrush and Midwest, and all those specific airbrush places, which are great to have. Those just weren't around yet when I started. Like I said, Coast had just started, and once I started getting into it, Bear Air in New England was getting keyed up, and that was good. But yeah, so I just kind of bought what I bought, and that was it. And like I said, I'm super glad I did. Do I want to do these buildings up here, though, in this group? Kind of do. All right, so I'm going to cut a quick template while we're talking. Yeah, so the advantage for me was that, yes, I paid more. I paid list price for mine, but there weren't any real super crappy airbrushes out there to get trapped into. like there are now. Now the temptation is, you get into it and you're like, I want to start airbrushing, but I'm not sure if I'm going to like it or whatever, if I'm going to be good at it, which is kind of weird because, everyone can be good at airbrushing. It's just, or really anything, because it's scales on your enjoyment factor first, But anyway, nowadays there's just so much garbage out there and it's super cheap. So the temptation is, of course, I want to get into it. I don't want to invest too much in case I don't like it or it's not for me. So I'm going to buy, this cheap piece of whatever. And that's great if you go into it knowing that you're buying a cheap piece of whatever. But if you're buying it thinking you're going to be able to learn with this thing, there's a good chance that it's not going to perform the way you need it to perform. And you're always going to wonder, like I said before, if it's you or the tool. And most of the time with these really garbagey things, it's the tool and it's not even you. So you're doing everything right. You're trying to learn and you can't because the thing isn't working the way it should. Actually, I cut that roof out, so I can't cut this out. I know I have this, but I'm going to cut it out again just to make sure I get it. So yeah, so that's the scary thing right now, and it's only scary again if you end up blaming yourself more than the tool when it is actually the tool. I'm a big, I always assume it's me, you know what I mean? And you shouldn't be that way. You shouldn't have to be that way. If it's the tool, it's the tool. But I'm always careful, not to assume that it's the tool and maybe it's something that I can work on. So between that, having really not too many specific airbrush places and also, not having a whole bunch of information out there. There were the books like Radu Vero's book, which was great. And again, Airbrush Action was kind of just starting up. So there were, a few magazines out. There was the Airbrush magazine by Mickey Harris, which was eventually sold to, I think it's Airbrush Step by Step, Roger Hassler's magazine, which is amazing. So that's where Airbrush magazine went. Airbrush Action folded a while ago amidst some pretty nasty kind of story. But that's that's how I learned, because it really wasn't, there weren't people really teaching that I knew of. Now it's great because there's so many good YouTube channels out there, that have great information. All right, I think I've got enough info here now to kind of get that done. I've got that red building. I painted this building right here already on the painting, so if I can get to that, I'll be in good shape. I just want to make sure I get as much of this. Maybe I'll do this one too. So yeah, Dred FX just posted some links to other Airbrush YouTube channels, which are great. So definitely check that out. And yeah, it's a whole different thing now. But yeah, the whole garbagey airbrush thing is something that I'm glad I didn't have to deal with when I was learning. I mean, there were brushes that weren't, as great. Like the Paasche VL is just a workhorse. It's like, I don't know, it's like buying a work truck. Not like a fancy, $100,000 pickup truck. This is like a work truck, something that you'll totally abuse and will do the job, but it's not super refined, and you're not going to go to you're not going to go to the Grammys or the Emmys in it. It's just a workhorse. And that brush was out there. That was actually my second airbrush that I bought. And they were inexpensive, and they were, like I said, they were workhorses. And, the Badgers, the lesser expensive Badgers, that weren't really meant for super crazy detail and all that. Those were out there. And you know, you would on the outset maybe say that the quality isn't, well, I'm not going to say the quality wasn't there, but the quality wasn't as high as some of the, you know, the like, well, definitely not like the Iwatas or whatever, the Olympuses and Harder and Steenbeck and all that, Aerograph. Those all had like relentless quality, where the Badgers and the Paasches weren't built like that. You know, it's like comparing, like again, it's like comparing, you know, a Ferrari to a GMC pickup truck. You know what I mean? They're totally different things, and that's what was going on. So the thing of it is, though, wasn't a overall. It wasn't that these things were made poorly. They just weren't as refined. Where now things are made poorly, and that's not a good thing. You know, we scream for things being, you know, super inexpensive, and we need them tomorrow. And we got it, you know, we got our prayers answered. And the problem is we shouldn't have been asking for that. Yeah, just so much garbage. And you know, and that makes me, I don't know, not angry, but it makes me like, when you get someone who's been airbrushing for a long time and has a lot of experience with them, and then they grab all these $20 brushes and say, oh yeah, these work fine, when their skill and their experience is overcompensating for the total crap quality of these things. So yeah, they can make them work, just like Tiger Woods could, you know, take a $4 golf club and, you know, and make it look good. The same thing with these brushes. So again, it sets it up that, you know, oh, I saw this guy who knows what he's talking about, or girl knows what they're talking about, and they say this brush is okay, and it's not. It's just not, you know. So I have strong feelings about that. And again, I don't blame anyone for wanting to, you know, give it a shot and try it out and buy one of those brushes just for fun to try out. But yeah, but don't, you know, don't use it as a guide to determine how good you're doing. All right, so we're going to grab some white. Again, this is just a mapping out part of the whole deal, so I can make sure I'm doing all this stuff in the right spot. And I can see the white roofs that I already put in, which is great. That means I'm lined up, and not only that, I'm looking down below, which you can't see, it's just off the bottom here, but the things that I've already painted that are cut out on this template, they're also lined up. So that's a really good sign. And again, it's just a series of checks and double checks that I want to make sure I keep checking. We're going to make these really white so that I can see them, because I really want to be able to have a good landmark to bounce back and forth from. Oh, I should probably gray out that building since I'm thinking about it. Let us do that so I don't forget it. This painting will definitely be done this year, 25. Yeah, that gives me enough. Okay, so this little guy right here, I wanted to kind of get that shading in a little bit now so I don't forget it. Oh, that's spiderwebbed really bad, but luckily it went in a section that I haven't painted yet, so I can cover that. That's good. If you're dealing with super thin paint, like this is, and you want to make sure you minimize the damage done by spiderwebbing, I always spray in the direction that will cause the least amount of damage. So I haven't obviously painted to the left of this building up here yet. So I'm spraying this shading color from this direction, not going down or, you know, anywhere where I've already painted, because that's where the spiderweb is going to go. But if I have it at an angle away from where I painted or into the part I haven't, even if I have a problem like that, it won't make any difference at all. So that helps out a lot. All right, I'm going to leave that black in the brush because you never know. And, you know. All right, let's start with, I want to get that little red building in first. That road kind of curls into it, so we're good there. Let's go red. I've got some black here, which is good. This is red oxide, which is also good. Here we go. Kind of a brick color. So yeah, great question or comment, Astral. I'm right there with you. You know, it's the moral of the story is don't buy crap. And actually, this is too bright. Don't buy crap, and yeah, be thankful for the amazing community that's out there right now. And yeah, that comment about Photoshop kind of taking over. They have called for the death of airbrushing, like constantly. You know, it's like as soon as the computer really started to take hold, yes, it changed illustration and it changed graphic design. You know, there was no one calling for an illustrator to make, you know, this name for a company out of chrome letters anymore, because they were doing it all digitally. So, you know, everyone, same thing. It's like, oh, the airbrush is going to die and, you know, no one's going to be using it. But it was really, you know, just at that point that while automotive painters had been using the airbrush for a long time, you know, since the 50s, really, when the custom airbrush stuff started with the airbrush kind of thing, it exploded in the 80s, the late 80s, early 90s, with guys like Craig Frazier and Mike LaValle and, you know, all of those guys who were doing the most amazing stuff, just like out of the gate, just exploded. And that automotive boost really helped keep the airbrush out. You know, it kept it out there. T-shirt artists during that period too, the 80s and the early 90s were hugely popular. So that all, you know, helped keep the airbrush going. And, you know, and then that was great for me as a fine artist, because, you know, all these companies were engaged with making these airbrushes to kind of capture some of that market. And by default, you know, the automotive push and the t-shirt push helped to keep my stuff going, because I could always count on supplies being everywhere because everyone needed it. Now you know what it is. I think the boom right now is the miniature painting, like the Warhammer stuff, those 3D printed small figurines. That is such a gigantic thing right now. Airbrushing has always been huge in modeling, like scale modeling, but now that the popularity of those games, oh my gosh, it seems like everyone's painting, you know, and using the airbrush for that, because it's the best way to do it. So again, I could care less. I could care less what's popular in a way, because as long as it makes these companies still want to produce airbrushes and better paints, it benefits me by far. I don't know if they'll ever, I hope that there'll be, you know, the one at some point or another, there'll be the big push is fine art. You know, there'll be a bunch of people using the airbrush in fine art, but I can't really see that. And this is something else that Astral touched on, you know, kind of using the airbrush in quote unquote fine art and having it not be accepted. Those days I think are over. I don't really run into people anymore who are like, oh, use the airbrush, that's cheating, or anything like that, which is good that that's not a thing anymore. But yeah, I don't know that. I don't know how to say it. For me, like, it's not it. Yeah, I use the tool, but it's not the tool that makes it would, like, my stuff. It's not the airbrush. You know what I mean? Like with automotive paint and that whole automotive painting thing, and certainly with t-shirt artists, because there's no other way to do it, or there isn't. You know, there really wasn't a way to do it. It was the airbrush did it. You know. So, oh, this is great. So I've got that building. That's that building. I'm just taking inventory here. So yeah, so for fine art, it's like, I don't know that there would ever be like a revolution because of the tool. You know what I mean? In fine art, it's always like a movement of, like this style of art or something. It's never usually the tool that promotes that. I mean, I'm sure you could track down like when, palette, like those just strictly palette knife paintings were a thing. And, and that was something that people looked at. But again, I don't think, especially for me, because I try super hard not to make the painting about a tool, about the airbrush or the paintbrush. So I don't think there'll ever be like, fine art is pushing airbrush sales. You know what I mean? I mean, maybe, but I don't see that as a thing. And I'm okay with it as long as something else is really, because my like I said, my hope is that there's something that's driving all these companies to continue doing what they're doing. The Iwatas and the Harder and Steenbecks, and I've seen, like Richpen was a good example. Richpen, Japanese brand, mainly made their mark on automatic spray head equipment. So these basically they build a spray gun nozzle that attaches to this automatic system, and they use them for commercial spraying and stuff like that. And that's what they did. That's really their hallmark. But because they work with all this spray equipment, they also had a line of great airbrushes. But it wasn't a primary thing for them. It was just an extra thing. Just because we build these things, we can build these things too. So unfortunately, that became something that was on the chopping block when they needed to cut their line down, and that's what I worry about. Certainly with companies like Iwata, that's all they do, and Badger and Paasche. They make airbrushes and spray guns, but the airbrushes are a huge part of what they do. So they're not going to go away that way. So I'm not worried about that. But I'm always, companies got to make money. To stay open. And I want to make sure that, the industry is big enough that it supports these amazing companies doing these amazing things for us. Go watch Harder and Steenbeck's video on their manufacturing process, and it'll blow you away. And I love that there are people buying their stuff enough that they've been doing it for a long time. So it's it's not surprising they're just going to keep going till they keep going forever. But I just want to make sure that there's always enough interest in it that that keeps these companies doing what they're doing. How's that for a soapbox? Good job, Astral. We got about 2 more minutes. We're just gonna kind of go until we hit the mark, and then we're gonna basically jump right back into this section next week. But I've got this building done now. Forgot to put the little shadows in the top of this, but it'll only take a couple seconds. And I've got this section now. By the end of the next episode, we'll have this whole area done too, which will be nice. Yeah, we'll keep moving across left across this way. And again, I've said it a couple times in this series. There's no real rhyme or reason. I could go straight up. I just, pick a direction, what seems to be interesting to me at the time, and bounce around with that. Use the reference for this. Yeah. Let's see what I'm doing here. Okay, so that's that. I got that. Oh, those. I might as well put those in. Again, if you haven't been over, you're on YouTube right now watching this, I totally appreciate that. But again, go check out that community post, and I'll leave that up if you want to add your soapbox topics. Please do that. I'd love to hear from you, and gives me something to talk about while we're working, which is always fun. Oops, that one was a little too low. That should have been up here. That's the trap of going by the reference photo, you know, the reference photo on my tablet. It's easy to put things in the wrong spot. So we'll get rid of that one. It's supposed to be up here. Here it is. All right. That looks lovely. All right, so here is the full view of that. And again, you know, we are making time on this. It's going along just fine. So thank you all for hanging out with me. If you would like to support what we do, please, you know what to do. Feed that algorithm monster. Hit that like and subscribe, and leave me a comment down below on something that is on your mind. You can also go to that community post and post your soapbox there too, and I will get to it. If you'd like to support us in a more financial way that helps keep the lights on, you can do what these wonderful people have done. Becoming a member here gets you a 10% discount across the board on my website at stephenleahy.com. And you also get early access to the time-lapse video, which pops up on Tuesday, but some people get it as early as the Thursday before, so depending on how good I am. All right, so there we go. All right, so for Steve Leahy and Open Studio, thank you all for hanging out with me, and I will catch you guys on the next one.